The outburst heard around the world. The courtroom awakens. The courtroom was packed to capacity, filled with journalists, political analysts, and everyday citizens who had come to witness what was expected to be a routine hearing. The air buzzed with quiet murmurs, the sound of camera shutters, and the occasional cough. At the center of it all stood JD Vance, his expression calm but focused, as he prepared to deliver his defense. He wasn't just defending himself, he was defending a movement, a belief system that millions stood behind. Yet, even the most seasoned reporters couldn't predict what would unfold next. The judge's temper boils over. As Vance began his statement, the judge's face twisted with an emotion that was impossible to mistake, not just anger, but disdain. His eyes narrowed, his knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of his bench. Then, like a dam breaking, he exploded. "I will never respect Trump's new DCK skr." The words tore through the courtroom like a grenade. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in the back dropped her pen. Reporters, fingers froze on their keyboards, unsure whether to keep typing or watch the spectacle unfold. The shockwave hits. For a heartbeat, the entire room was frozen in stunned silence. It was as though time itself paused. A judge, an emblem of impartiality and justice, had hurled a vulgar, politically charged insult at a sitting senator. People glanced at each other, unsure if they had heard correctly. Even the court stenographer hesitated, unsure if she was supposed to record such an outburst. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the judge's red face, contorted with fury, and Vance's stoic, unmoving posture. It was a moment that would be replayed on news stations around the world within minutes. JD Vance stands his ground. Despite the verbal attack, JD Vance didn't flinch. His expression didn't change. He met the judge's glare with an unwavering, piercing stare. There was no anger, no indignation, only a quiet, unspoken resolve. It was the look of a man who knew the power of silence. He knew that no matter what he said now, the damage had already been done, but not to him. The judge's words had painted him as a victim, a man standing against a biased system. And in that moment, Vance decided to let the judge's fury speak for itself. The courtroom spirals into chaos. The silence didn't last long. Within seconds, the room erupted. Lawyers shouted objections. Reporters began whispering furiously into their microphones, broadcasting the scandal live. Court officers, unsure of what to do, looked to one another for guidance. The judge, seemingly unbothered by the commotion, continued his tirade, pointing a trembling finger at Vance. "You're a disgrace. A puppet. You don't belong here." His voice cracked with rage. This wasn't a courtroom anymore, it was a battlefield. The public reaction explodes. Outside the courthouse, news spread like wildfire. Social media erupted. #CorruptJudge and #StandWithVance trended within minutes. Supporters of Vance praised his composure, while critics debated whether the judge's outburst was justified or a career-ending mistake. Protesters gathered, their voices rising in chants, while police worked to control the growing crowd. The country was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. The lawyers intervened. Vance's legal team sprang into action, demanding a mistrial. His lead attorney, a sharp, composed woman named Emily Rhodes, stood up with a commanding voice. "Your Honor, this court is no longer impartial. We demand an immediate recess and judicial review," she declared. The judge, still seething, slammed his gavel down repeatedly, his voice drowning out hers. "Sit down," he roared. But the damage was done, his credibility shattered before the world. Security is called in. Court officers, previously frozen in place, finally moved. Two guards approached the bench cautiously, unsure how to handle a situation they'd never faced before. "Your Honor, please, step down," one of them said, his voice low and careful. The judge snapped his head towards them, his voice venomous. "You dare," he spat. But they didn't back down. The law, after all, applies to everyone, even the judge himself. The arrest no one saw coming. The unthinkable happened. In a stunning twist, the officers placed the judge under arrest. His face twisted in disbelief. "I'm the law here," he shouted, but the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The courtroom watched in silence as he was escorted out, his voice trailing behind him. Vance didn't move. He didn't smile. He simply watched, his hands clasped calmly in front of him. He had won without saying a word. The fallout begins. The world outside exploded. News networks ran breaking reports. Judge arrested after explosive outburst. Headlines screamed. Political commentators debated the implications. Was this proof of a broken system? Or had the judge simply let his emotions get the better of him? Regardless of opinion, one thing was certain: JD Vance walked out of that courtroom with his head held high, not as a defeated man, but as a symbol of resilience.